When planes fall from the sky, they don't just take lives, they shatter families and nations, leaving stories that haunt us long after the wreckage is cleared. These are the most disturbing plane crash deaths that reveal the fragile line between routine travel and unthinkable horror. It was August 12, 1985, and the sweltering Tokyo heat made the air conditioning inside Haneda Airport a welcome relief. Among the 524 passengers boarding Japan Airlines Flight 123 was 43-year-old Q Sakamoto, Japan's most beloved international star. The gentle-natured singer had just finished a recording session and was heading to Osaka for a television appearance. Ironically, he was only on this flight because his preferred airline, ANA, was completely booked due to the Obon holiday rush. Sakamoto, born Hisashi Oshima, had made history in 1963 when his melancholic ballad Sukiyaki became the first Japanese song to reach #1 on the American Billboard charts. Despite his international fame, he remained humble and soft-spoken, known for his warm smile and dedication to his craft. That evening, he carried his guitar case and wore the same gentle expression that had charmed audiences worldwide. At 6:12 p.m., the massive Boeing 747 lifted off into the humid evening sky. Captain Masami Takahama, a seasoned 49-year-old pilot with over 12,000 flight hours, guided the aircraft toward what should have been a routine 54-minute journey to Osaka. The passengers settled in, many preparing for the Obon Festival celebrations awaiting them. 12 minutes into the flight at 24,000 feet, catastrophe struck without warning. At exactly 6:24 p.m., the rear pressure bulkhead exploded with tremendous force. The sudden decompression was violent and terrifying. Oxygen masks dropped as the cabin filled with a deafening roar. The explosion tore away the aircraft's vertical stabilizer and severed all 4 hydraulic systems, leaving the massive plane nearly impossible to control. The Boeing 747 immediately began oscillating wildly in what pilots call a phugoid cycle, climbing and diving uncontrollably like a wounded bird. Captain Takahama declared an emergency, his voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around him. Without hydraulic power, the crew could only attempt to control the aircraft using engine thrust alone. For 32 agonizing minutes, the plane wandered erratically through Japanese airspace. It first headed toward the Pacific Ocean, then turned back toward land, its altitude swinging violently between 24,000 and 7,000 feet. Air traffic controllers watched helplessly as the aircraft's radar signature painted an increasingly desperate picture. Inside the cabin, passengers quickly understood their dire situation. Many began writing farewell messages to their families on whatever paper they could find: napkins, boarding passes, and pages torn from magazines. Q Sakamoto, the man whose voice had once brought joy to millions across 2 continents, likely spent those final moments thinking of his wife and young daughter, perhaps finding some peace in knowing his music would outlive him. The aircraft continued its terrifying dance through the sky, climbing to 13,000 feet before entering a final, wild descent toward the mountains. At 6:56 p.m., traveling at 346 miles per hour, Flight 123 struck Mount Takamagahara with devastating force. The impact was instantaneous and catastrophic. The aircraft flipped upon hitting the mountainside and came to rest upside down in the dense forest. Rescue operations were delayed for 14 hours due to the remote mountain location. When teams finally reached the wreckage, they found only 4 survivors in the tail section. Q Sakamoto was among the 520 people who perished instantly upon impact, making this the deadliest single aircraft accident in aviation history. The cause was later traced to a botched repair 7 years earlier. After a minor tail strike in 1978, technicians had incorrectly patched the pressure bulkhead, reducing its strength by 70% and creating a fatal weakness that finally failed after 12,319 pressurization cycles. Sakamoto's death sent shockwaves through Japan and the international music community. The next day, a pre-recorded performance was broadcast on television, a haunting reminder of the voice that had fallen silent. His funeral drew thousands of mourners, and his music continues to bridge cultures decades later, ensuring that while his life ended tragically, His legacy endures forever. It was March 24, 2015, when Marina Bandre Lopez Belio, a 37-year-old film editor from Manchester, boarded Germanwings Flight 9525 in Barcelona with her 7-month-old son, Julian. Marina was a perfectionist who had earned respect in Manchester's competitive media industry through her exceptional color correction work. Known for her warm smile and meticulous attention to detail, she had successfully balanced independent film projects with single motherhood. The Spanish-born editor had been visiting family in Barcelona following a funeral. As she settled into her seat with Julian, Marina carried her laptop containing ongoing post-production work she planned to finish upon returning home. Her colleagues knew her as someone who brought the same dedication to motherhood that she applied to transforming raw footage into cinematic gold. She often worked late into the night, Julian sleeping peacefully beside her editing station. At 10:30 a.m., as the Airbus A320 cruised at 38,000 feet over French countryside, Captain Patrick Sondenheimer stepped out for a routine break. Co-pilot Andreas Lubitz, concealing severe mental health issues, immediately locked the reinforced cockpit door. Marina, adjusting Julian's blanket, initially noticed nothing as Lubitz began programming their descent toward death. The aircraft plummeted from 38,000 to 6,800 feet in 8 terrifying minutes. Alarms pierced the cabin as Marina instinctively held Julian closer, her professional instincts recognizing something catastrophically wrong. Outside the cockpit, Sondenheimer pounded desperately on the door, while flight attendants attacked it with an emergency axe. Marina's years of editing dramatic scenes couldn't prepare her for this reality. The experienced traveler who had navigated countless flights for work projects now faced an unthinkable situation. Through the windows, alpine peaks grew menacingly larger as passengers realized they were trapped in deliberate murder. Her editing experience had taught her to recognize when stories were heading toward dark endings. At 10:41 a.m., Flight 9525 struck the mountainside near Barcelona at 434 miles per hour. Marina and Julian died instantly alongside 148 others in Lubitz's premeditated mass murder-suicide. The co-pilot had researched cockpit security systems while concealing his deteriorating mental state from employers. Recovery teams spent weeks navigating steep, rocky alpine terrain, collecting remains from the scattered debris field. Marina was identified through dental records and personal effects, while Julian required DNA analysis. The Manchester media community mourned losing a talented professional whose craft dedication matched her maternal devotion. The tragedy sparked global aviation reforms, mandating 2 crew members remain in the cockpits during flight. Marina's story became part of larger conversations about pilot mental health screening and passenger vulnerability to those controlling aircraft. Colleagues remembered Marina not just as a skilled editor who transformed footage into compelling narratives, but as a loving mother who successfully balanced creative passion with parental responsibility. Friends recalled her infectious laugh during late-night editing sessions and pride in discussing Julian's milestones. She had recently completed a documentary about motherhood in creative industries. Her final project remained unfinished on her laptop, a poignant reminder of dreams cut short. The woman who spent her career crafting perfect endings never got to write her own. Marina's story serves as a haunting reminder of how ordinary journeys can become extraordinary tragedies when placed in the wrong hands. The editor who once controlled every frame of her professional work became a victim of someone else's devastating final cut. It was June 1, 2009, when Prince Pedro Luis de Orleans e Bragansza, a 26-year-old banking executive, boarded Air France Flight 447 in Rio de Janeiro, bound for Paris. The young royal, who stood third in line to Brazil's former throne, had been visiting his family in São Paulo after completing another successful quarter at BNP Paribas in Luxembourg. Pedro Luis was everything a modern prince should be: intelligent, multilingual, and professionally accomplished. After graduating with a business administration degree from IBM in Rio, and completing postgraduate economic studies at Fundação Getúlio Vargas, he had carved out his own path in international banking. His fluency in Portuguese, English, and French made him invaluable in Luxembourg's financial sector, where he specialized in investment management and corporate consulting. The prince was known for his warm personality and dedication to both his royal heritage and professional career. Unlike many of his contemporaries, he had successfully balanced tradition with modernity, earning respect in banking circles while maintaining his family obligations. His colleagues at BNP Paribas described him as hard-working and personable, someone who never let his royal status overshadow his professional achievements. Born into the Vasouras branch of Brazil's imperial family, Pedro Luiz held dual Brazilian-Belgian citizenship through his mother, Princess Christine de Ligne. His upbringing had been carefully balanced between royal protocol and practical education, preparing him for a world where nobility meant more than titles. It meant responsibility and contribution to society. His family had high hopes for his future, seeing him as a bridge between Brazil's imperial past and its modern democratic present. Ironically, his cousin Princess Alex de Ligne had originally planned to take the same flight, but changed her plans at the last minute, a decision that would haunt the family forever. Pedro Luiz had been excited about returning to Luxembourg, where he had built a reputation as a rising star in international finance. At 2:11 a.m., as Flight 447 cruised at 37,000 feet over the Atlantic Ocean, disaster struck. Ice crystals blocked the Airbus A330's pitot tubes, causing erroneous airspeed readings and triggering autopilot disconnection. In the confusion that followed, the co-pilots made a fatal error, pulling back on the controls instead of pushing forward, sending the aircraft into a deep stall. Pedro Luiz, along with 227 other passengers and crew, experienced 3 minutes and 28 seconds of terror as the plane fell nose up through 35,000 feet of dark Atlantic sky. Oxygen masks were deployed as cabin pressure dropped during the uncontrolled descent. The aircraft struck the ocean belly first at 107 miles per hour at 2:14 a.m., 640 miles northeast of Brazil. The impact was instantaneous and fatal for everyone aboard. Brazilian Navy ships recovered Pedro Luiz's body 5 days later, identifying him through personal effects and seating records. His death sent shockwaves through both European nobility and the international banking community, cutting short a life of immense promise. The main wreckage remained lost until 2011, when it was finally located 12,800 feet below the ocean surface. The Brazilian royal family held memorial services, mourning the loss of a young man who had successfully bridged the gap between aristocratic tradition and modern professional life. His tragic end became a symbol of how quickly fate can change, transforming a routine business trip into one of aviation's most devastating disasters. Pedro Luiz's death marked the end of a promising career and a life that embodied the evolution of modern royalty. His legacy lived on through improved aviation safety measures that emerged from this tragedy. It was October 31, 2015, when 10-month-old Darina Gramova pressed her tiny palms against the cold glass of Pulkovo Airport's departure lounge window. Her bright eyes followed the aircraft below, completely unaware this would be her final glimpse of the world she knew. Darina's father, 32-year-old Alexei Gramova, was a dedicated aircraft mechanic at St. Petersburg's busy airport. Ironically, the man who ensured aircraft safety was about to become a victim of aviation terror. His wife, Tatiana, 29, worked as a kindergarten teacher and had taken maternity leave to care for their precious daughter. The young family had saved for months to afford their first vacation together to Egypt's Sharm el-Sheikh resort. Tatiana captured that haunting moment of Darina at the window, posting it online, calling her daughter the chief passenger. The image showed pure innocence, a baby discovering the wonder of flight. Her chubby hands splayed against the glass as massive jets prepared for departure. Neither parent could have imagined that this tender moment would become a symbol of unspeakable tragedy. The family boarded Metrojet Flight 9268 among 221 other passengers, mostly Russian tourists returning from Red Sea holidays. Alexei likely noticed the Airbus A321's condition during boarding. Tatiana secured Darina in her infant seat, probably singing softly to keep her calm during takeoff. At 6:13 a.m., just 23 minutes after departure, an ISIS explosive device hidden inside a Schweppes soda can detonated in the rear cargo hold. The bomb, planted by airport workers sympathetic to the terrorist organization, created a catastrophic blast that instantly severed the aircraft's tail section. The explosion occurred at 31,000 feet, causing immediate decompression and structural failure. The Gromova family likely died instantly as the fuselage broke apart. The forward section separated from the tail and entered an uncontrolled dive toward the Sinai Peninsula below. During the aircraft's violent breakup, Darina's tiny body was ejected from the disintegrating plane, her infant seat providing no protection against the forces involved. Egyptian and Russian recovery teams faced the grim task of searching the vast desert for remains scattered across miles of barren landscape. Darina's body was discovered 21 miles from the main wreckage site, a heartbreaking testament to the explosion's devastating power. Her parents were found together in the primary debris field. The photograph Tatiana had posted hours earlier spread across social media, transforming from a mother's proud moment into a global symbol of innocence destroyed by terrorism. The image of Darina at the airport window became synonymous with the attack, representing not just one family's loss, but the senseless destruction of 224 lives. Russia immediately suspended all flights to Egypt and implemented enhanced security measures worldwide. ISIS later claimed responsibility, stating the attack was retaliation for Russian military involvement in Syria. The terrorist organization had specifically targeted civilian aircraft to maximize psychological impact, turning a family's dream vacation into an international tragedy. Alexei's colleagues created a memorial near the maintenance hangar where he had worked. Tatiana's kindergarten students continued asking when their beloved teacher would return. The Gromova family's story became emblematic of terrorism's indiscriminate cruelty. A hardworking mechanic, a caring teacher, and an innocent baby. 3 lives representing ordinary people who become victims of extraordinary evil. Their deaths served as a stark reminder that terrorism targets the fundamental human desire for happiness and family togetherness. Today, enhanced airport security measures help prevent similar attacks, but no amount of screening can restore the lives lost that Halloween morning. It was March 3, 1974, when Gary Raychard kissed his wife Connie goodbye at the train station that morning. The 36-year-old airline sales manager from America had no idea this routine business trip would be his last. Gary was a devoted father of 4 young children, known for his warm smile and dedication to both his family and career. His colleagues respected his expertise in aviation sales, while his neighbors admired how he always made time for his kids despite frequent travel demands. That afternoon, Gary boarded Turkish Airlines Flight 981 at London's Heathrow Airport, bound for Paris. As someone who worked in the airline industry, he understood aircraft operations better than most passengers. The Macdonald Douglas DC-10 seemed like any other plane he'd flown on countless times before. Gary settled into his seat, likely reviewing business documents for his upcoming meetings, unaware that a deadly design flaw lurked beneath the aircraft. At exactly 12:30 p.m., as Flight 981 cruised at 11,500 feet over the French countryside, disaster struck without warning. The rear cargo door, improperly secured due to a known manufacturing defect, suddenly blew out with explosive force. The violent decompression was catastrophic. Gary felt the aircraft shudder as the cabin floor collapsed beneath him, severing critical flight control cables that ran underneath the passenger compartment. In those terrifying moments, 6 passengers were immediately sucked out through the massive opening where the cargo door had been. Gary, with his aviation knowledge, would have understood the gravity of the situation, as the DC-10 became completely uncontrollable. The pilots fought desperately with severed controls, but their efforts were futile against the mechanical devastation. The aircraft entered a steep dive toward the dense Ermenonville forest below. As the plane plummeted earthward at tremendous speed, the cabin floor buckled and twisted, trapping passengers beneath debris and twisted metal. Gary and the other 345 people aboard experienced 6 minutes of absolute terror as the aircraft descended uncontrollably toward the forest canopy. At 12:36 p.m., Flight 981 struck the trees at 497 miles per hour. The impact was instantaneous and devastating. The aircraft disintegrated completely upon contact, scattering wreckage across a 200-acre area of dense woodland. Gary and all others aboard died immediately, making it one of aviation's deadliest accidents at that time. Recovery teams spent weeks methodically searching the debris field, collecting remains and personal effects scattered throughout the forest. Gary was eventually identified through his belongings and records, bringing devastating news to his family back home. Connie was left to raise their 4 children alone, forever changed by the sudden loss of her husband and their father. The tragedy's impact extended far beyond that March day. Gary's children grew up with only memories and stories of their father, never experiencing his guidance through their formative years. Decades later, his son Michael made an emotional journey to France, visiting the crash site and memorial to honor his father's memory and find a connection to the man he barely remembered. The crash led to significant aviation safety improvements. Mandatory design changes were implemented for cargo door systems, and floor reinforcement requirements were strengthened for all wide-body aircraft. These modifications came too late for Gary and the other victims, but helped prevent similar tragedies. Gary's story represents more than one life lost. It shows how tragedy ripples through generations, leaving families forever altered by a single moment of mechanical failure. It was September 11, 2001, and Mark Kendall Bingham was running late. The 31-year-old public relations executive had overslept in his New Jersey hotel room after visiting his grandmother the night before. His towering 6'5" frame moved quickly through Newark Airport as he rushed to catch United Flight 93 to San Francisco, arriving just minutes before boarding closed. Mark was the kind of person who commanded attention wherever he went. His charismatic personality and athletic build from his UC Berkeley rugby days made him a natural leader. As a successful PR executive, he knew how to stay calm under pressure, a skill his mother Alice Hoagland had taught him during her years as a United Airlines flight attendant. Mark was also openly gay and passionate about promoting inclusion in sports, working to establish gay rugby leagues across the country. Settling into his first-class seat, Mark had no idea this would be his final flight. At 9:28 a.m., 4 Al-Qaeda hijackers armed with knives and box cutters stormed the cockpit, killing the pilots. Ziad Jarrah, now controlling the aircraft, announced over the intercom that he had a bomb and ordered everyone to remain seated. Mark immediately reached for his cell phone, calling his mother with remarkable composure. He identified himself formally, explaining that 3 men had taken over the plane. Through passenger phone calls, Mark and others learned about the attacks on the World Trade Center, realizing their flight was part of a coordinated terrorist operation. The former rugby player's competitive instincts kicked in. Along with Todd Beamer, Tom Burnett, and Jeremy Glick, Mark began organizing a counterattack. His rugby experience had taught him the importance of teamwork and sacrifice for the greater good. These men understood that their plane was likely headed for a target in Washington, D.C., possibly the Capitol or the White House. At 9:57 a.m., the passengers launched their assault on the cockpit. Jarrah violently rocked the aircraft, trying to throw them off balance as they fought their way forward. Mark's athletic strength and determination proved crucial in the desperate struggle. The cockpit voice recorder captured the sounds of the fierce battle as passengers shouted encouragement to each other. At 10:03 a.m., Flight 93 crashed inverted into a Pennsylvania field at 563 miles per hour. Mark died instantly upon impact, along with all 43 other souls aboard. But their sacrifice had succeeded. The hijackers never reached their intended target. The crash site became hallowed ground, eventually transformed into a national memorial. Mark's heroic actions, documented through phone recordings and flight data, saved countless lives in the nation's capital. His mother, Alice, became a powerful advocate for 9/11 families and LGBTQ rights, ensuring her son's story of courage reached the world. The international gay rugby community honored Mark by establishing the Bingham Cup, a biennial tournament that now includes teams from 20 countries. What started as 8 teams in San Francisco in 2002 has grown into a global celebration of inclusion and athletic excellence, with 148 teams participating in recent tournaments. Mark never got to write the great American gay novel he had dreamed of, but his legacy speaks louder than words. His final act of heroism proved that ordinary people can accomplish extraordinary things when faced with unthinkable evil. The rugby player who once tackled opponents on college fields made his ultimate tackle in the skies above Pennsylvania, helping to prevent an even greater national tragedy. His story continues inspiring athletes worldwide, showing that true champions fight not just for victory, but for others. If these stories left you shaken, click the next video now for more chilling aviation disasters that changed flying forever.